works the room, doesn't he? He just works the room.
Yeah, I know.
Call the meeting to order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, let the record show that all members are present, except for Ellie, who is our student council representative. We'll move into winter accommodations. Superintendent?
Okay. How's it going, everybody? Good to see you. Hey, what a special evening for us. I know it's really special for our school board. And, you know, a lot of you might not have get to see school boards before, but I think it's important that you're here, that we acknowledge the important work that they do. One thing that I think is important is there's been recent studies out on all governmental elected officials in terms of, you know, how people view them. And in public perception is folks have more respect for school boards and what they do than any other governmental official. And I think that speaks volumes. They provide all of the governance for every single thing that we do in the school district. And they're my boss, and they put their trust in me to lead a great group of people to serve all of you. So thank you to the school board. Maybe we can give them a round of applause. So we're here to acknowledge some amazing accomplishments from lots of folks in this room. You need to know how very proud we are of what you do. We're an organization of student learning, but learning happens anywhere, anytime, any place, right? And all of our extracurriculars and our activities are an extension of what we do every single day in the classroom and really prepare you for the world outside of the walls of our schools in an ever-changing world. And I can tell you from being someone that I was very involved in activities and sports and plays and drama and the arts and all of the different things, and the skills that were acquired in that setting are transferable to every endeavor that we take on in life. And I hope that you really appreciate that and use those skills for great things. So what we're going to do tonight, we're going to take the different activities and we are that made it to state or had different significant accomplishments this year, and we're going to go by activity. And if their coach is here, we ask that coach to come forward, and we will give you the honor to say their name. And you'll come up, and we'll hand you a certificate, and we'll shake your hand, and you'll go around here, and then hopefully, if we can, we'll get a picture of each group, maybe with the school board standing behind. I think that will be a nice photo op for us and for you, if you wish. So I really in no particular order, I'm just going to grab what I have up here first. Do we happen to have the speech coach here? Yes. All right. Thank you very much. We'll give you the honor, and then he'll call your name. I'll shake your hand, and then you'll make your way through and shake everyone's hand and stay up here for a photo op.
We have Dominic Navarez. Megan Johnson.
Hey, congratulations.
No, not here. We also have Blair Oscar. And then Rachel Hazelton, also qualified for state.
Okay. All right, do we have a wrestling coaches? Well, as a former wrestler, I'll take that on. That's where I got this funny looking ear here. So, these athletes qualified and competed at the state tournament. We have Parker Atkins. Parker is not here, but we'll think of him. How about Landon Parent? Okay. Landon's not here. Kyle Oki. Not here. Zachary Wells. Not here. So we will make sure that they get these certificates. Thank you very much. How about the boys swim and dive? We have the coach. Hey, let's get up for Wayne Lawrence.
Congratulations.
All right, Wade, come back. You gotta get your picture with the board.
Stand in front of the tall guys.
Yeah, that's good, that's good. All right, way to go. All right, do we have the varsity bowling coach here? First person that participated is Bryce Keekle. Zach Andreessen. Elizabeth Ricknauer.
Awesome. I know. 600 series?
Ryan Andreessen. And then Ryan Peterson. And then we're missing one. Okay, Joe Meyer, we got to make sure we get him a certificate. Okay, all right. Well, we'll get him a certificate. Okay, folks, do you want to come back and get a photo op? Jason, are you getting pictures for us?
I wasn't, but I can.
We're missing some good Facebook, Twitter,
There you go.
Instagram.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah. Ben, you either gonna move in or out. There you go. All right.
All right, give him a hand. There you go, guys. Okay, do we have our History Day advisor?
I do double duty.
All right, way to go.
Good job, Coach.
I was just looking around, there's no studies teachers here.
Okay, there you go, good.
All right, Hannah Mongu. Keely Cox.
Shake everybody's hand. There you go.
Maddie Hubbard. Jasmine King. Ben Nordine. Grace Actele. Aubrey Harvilla. Adam Schrader. Addison Lundberg. Olivia Olson. Peyton Dawkins. Isaac Whiting. Jonah Whiting.
Okay, very good. Let's do our photo op. Let's get our history.
Oh, we have any more? And Antonio Mojica.
You guys all slide back in here into the middle.
All right, let's give him a hand. Thank you. Okay, our last group is our boys basketball team. Coach, you want to come up and give?
Manny Fleechek. State Labs. James Fleechek. Riley O'Neill.
Congratulations, Dave.
Cooper Novak. Cody Allison. Jake Peeble. Cody Miller. Calvin Peterson. Cal O'Neill. Cole Burning. Adam Williams. Evan Shimmy. Ben Arsenal. Aiden Stay. Michael Inksman. John Stimler. Caleb Rainey.
All right. Let's have our photo op with the boys basketball team.
You look sharp.
Hey,
Want to give it to them?
Jeff, where are you?
I'm fine.
You know, before before, we understand that a lot of you are gonna leave, maybe all of you, and that's just fine. You're all welcome to stay, but, we don't expect you to. Beautiful night, by the way. I do apologize, there's a couple, certificates that we missed tonight, so if that was the case, then what we'll do is we will, make sure that we, get those to you. So our sincerest apologies on that. But I've been to about 5 different school districts in my career. This is the very first school district I've ever been to where the school board acknowledges activities to have this kind of success. So I'm very thankful to be part of a school district that does that. I think it's a long-standing tradition. It's an awesome one. So thank you so much, board, and thank you all. So with that, thanks everybody for coming. Have a great evening.
Take 5 minutes to wash your hands. Take 5 minutes to wash your hands. It's cold and flu season.
Oh, does she have hers?
Got the wrong one.
So we had to say something. We're handing.
Nice.
Sorry.
Good catch. Yeah.
So you can't. We just keep this. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Howard might know who was missing from speech. Who was missing from speech?
Claire, Rachel, and Megan. I
No,
know
I mean
Claire.
a missing certificate.
Oh, Rachel Hazelton.
Did wrestling get the memo?
Everybody got a letter.
Okay.
Chris at the primary school's daughter.
Yes, got it.
That's where a lot of the kids.
We
are
have
at
folks
sports.
at the choir.
A little bit more fun than a school board meeting.
Yeah, there's a track meet today. I know that.
Yep, there is. North Branch. Yeah, that's right. You were in tennis and you made us. But on the flip side, this was the night that had the least conflicts on the board meeting.
All right, we'll move right into board member committee reports. Start with Howard.
Just got done with a really quick and wonderful policy.
Standing.
I had no committee this month.
I was on the policy committee.
I had agenda planning.
I attended the chamber lunch today and wellness committee.
Yeah, I did the agenda planning.
I attended the chamber lunch with Dan Conroy today and a C executive meeting and then a C general meeting, and just a couple of things with both of those. Prior to this last executive committee and general meeting, Brad, who's the legislator lobby for C, been pretty positive about the session, but it was a really big switch. And I did send you today, because I don't know if you get all of that stuff, but I did send a call to action. The House and the Senate are really far apart. 3 and 2 in the House, which is what the governor has, but 0.5 and 0.5 is in the Senate. And so Deb put together specific people to contact and what to say. So this would be a good time to do a little bit of legislative work, because that would be devastating for us, the district, if we got 0.5 anywhere either. Right. And I don't, do you get everything that she sends?
We
Because this
do.
was you get this side by
Yep.
side. So this is another one to, look at, because it's kind of scary right now. So his demeanor was not good. C puts their general meeting programs, videos on their website. So when you miss those, because I'm the only one that goes, you can see them. the two programs, Friday were Kent Pical, who's with the Search Institute. And the Search Institute is highly respected in the education area. And he talked about developmental relationships. I think something maybe the high school redesign. And then Jennifer Burton, who was from the Minnesota Children's Defense.
Just a quick question, is it hard to get to that link, or could you just send that link?
No, if you just go to the C website,
It's there.
it's there.
Okay,
They're
thanks.
there, yeah. They just started doing that, so you can see.
Okay.
You're always welcome with me.
All right, superintendent.
Well, I guess I would echo, I think it now is, when we get into crunch time, I think it's time for us to start contacting legislators. Senator Matthews, might be a good one to talk to, given that the Senate, bill is so much, the targets are so much less. So I think strategically, we gotta be hitting the Senate piece quite a bit. Lots of movement with the high school redesign. We had a great session today with the Chamber of Commerce. And I think that will propel us into getting more participation in our Living and Learning committee, where we're trying to create more partnerships with our business committee. I do think that whatever we come up with in our redesign, there'll be some creation of a stronger network of partnerships with the business community, and probably some more relevant, authentic experiences for our students that hopefully to get them in some internships and or field experience and those kinds of things. So we're excited. We have more of our visioning meetings coming up. We have a visioning meeting that's actually this Thursday, one of our next ones. So if you haven't hit one of those, they're good. They're good, couple hours to participate. So I think that's good. Other than that, I'm gonna stop my remarks. Lots of the items on the agenda would be things I would report on, but they're on the agendas. Thank you.
All right, we'll move into approve agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by Deb and seconded by Howard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Number 7, discuss and act on previous board meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion was made by Chad, second by Jim. During discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a move into the consent agenda? Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion was made by Deb, second by Howard. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Going into action items, we have pool restoration bid. The link is connected there. I'm sure you've all looked at it. Is there a motion to accept the restoration bid by
I move to accept Horizon Commercial Pool Supplies bid for the high school pool restoration as per.
Is there a second? Motion is made by Eric Strandberg, seconded by Chad. Is there any comments, discussion?
When we did the work at the pool before, like years ago, how many bids did we get then? Oh, 3, 4, what's that, 7 years ago?
Probably before my time.
Oh, all right.
This is going forward the significance.
Yeah,
since
other
I've
than
been here.
painting. Did painting.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
We
how many-
expected, a couple more bids, but they didn't. Small. We received.
All right, any other discussion, questions? We'll go by roll call, starting with Sue.
Yes.
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 All right. Move on to, motion passes. We'll move on to second reading of policy. The summary of changes are listed there. Is there a motion to accept the second reading? Motion was made by Howard, seconded by
Second.
Jim. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion passes. Now we'll go into our work session. Number 10, hiring process update.
I'm gonna Jason's gonna do the bulk share of this, but I thought this would be a good idea for us to get this in front of the board. We've made quite a few significant changes to our hiring processes to lay that out, to bring some more consistency and rigor and lots more steps in the process. We ask you in our governance model for you to entrust us to go through the hiring process and hire the best candidates. And I thought you, at the very least, needed to know the process that we go through so that you can really trust that we are doing our due diligence to find the best candidates and that's going to be best for our district. So I want to thank Jason and Mr. Voce actually helped a little bit too, and as he's getting some internship hours for the superintendency. So they worked hard on this and presented back and forth to the administrative council as they went. So I'll turn it over to Jason.
So attached is a PDF of the document that we are working with all of our administrators on. This is a great opportunity to work with the administrative team. For me, being new to the district and getting to know each of them individually, a lot of referencing to each of the individual building principals so we can compile and have a consistent process that we use across the district. So just kind of walking through the process. Step one basically is the posting of the position. We now do that through Laserfiche, which is electronic submission. So the building administrator submits that in. That gives Michelle and I the opportunity to look at it and make sure that it's fitting in within both their FTE structure and the budget that we're looking at. And then it gets approved from there. It does go out to our network then, it goes out to EdPost and several other posting locations so that we are trying to get the best applicants that we can. In step two, then that is where the building administrators, typically your hiring managers, are creating your, selecting your candidates. There is a screening tool that they use. None of these are live links for you, obviously, because we're trying to keep this as Princeton's practice versus sharing this with the entire state. I think we have a great tool there that we're using. Next, then it goes into creating the interview questions. And this is where we were able to get the banks of questions from both the high school, middle school, intermediate, and primary schools, and being able to combine those years of experience that each of those administrators have so that each of them can kind of go back into the pool and say, oh, I really liked this question. Or if there's something specific they're working on within their building, they can go into the pool and see if there's a question that relates to that. I'm also working with food service and the custodial units as well to get those embedded into this as well. The hiring manager then works with their building secretary to put those questions together, put the interview guides together, and then we start the interview process. Step four is selecting the interview team. And so as you see each of the different units there from paraprofessionals through administration, each unit has a specific team that we want interviewing. So like for a paraprofessional, we want the building administrator, and then typically these are special education paraprofessionals, so we want a special education teacher involved as well. And then we invite another representative from the para unit and invite the director of student services. So for a para interview, typically there's going to be at least 2 people on the interview team. There could be up to 4. And so the invites mean that they're invited. They don't necessarily have to attend. A lot of times if we have multiple positions, we'll have multiple building principals involved in that process. So as you look through that, there's a set for the custodians, the food service, secretarial, our teaching positions. For our coaching positions, typically with our head coach, we are utilizing the high school athletic director, utilizing additional coaches in those roles as well. And then we try, depending on the level and depending on what we're looking for, we do invite students and parents to be involved in that. And so this has been a good process for us to use. Once you get to the assistant level, then that falls more under the head coaches, that we want them having their input on their coaching staff. For middle school, again, we do have a process utilizing the athletic director, the middle school athletic director. I will tell you, in talking with Jana, a lot of times, and just like any district, we're out begging people typically to coach our middle school sports, versus getting tons of applicants. But again, it is a piece that we want to make sure we have a hiring process in place, so that we are supporting the schools as a whole. When we look at our deans and coordinators and assistant principals, typically there's 2 levels with that. So we want those building secretaries involved, the teaching staff and administrators, and then typically that would be inviting the human resource director. And then all of our administrative positions go through a second round of interviews as well. In step 5, it does talk about the interview and reference checking. Most of our positions are able to be filled after 1 round. There are some positions we do have a second round for. There is a scoring rubric that we utilize when people are being interviewed. We found this to be highly effective because it takes the kind of favoritism out of it. We're able to say, yep, these are our top 3 candidates that are potentially moving on. Then the hiring manager gets to do the reference checking. There's a reference check guide here where they do call the 3 or 4 references that the candidate has indicated, gathers that information, and then they in the end get to make that decision based off of their feedback. All of that packet and information gets returned back to me as the human resource director. Those are all then stored because obviously we want to make sure that we're following our processes, making sure things are equitable. If someone were to ever question the process or felt like they were being maybe discriminated against, we would be able to pull that information out and be able to show them, yep, this is the process we followed. As I said, step 6 is that second round of interview. For some of our positions, that does include a second round. And then step 7 would be an interview with the superintendent. Typically, that's just going to be with our administrative type roles. Otherwise, we would keep them very busy with the number of hires that we do have. So, and then step 8 is offering the position and onboarding. So the hiring manager actually offers the position, but they don't actually get to hire the person. That is when it comes through our consent agenda. So when you as a board are agreeing to motion and approve the consent agenda, that is where all of our hires are at. Once that has been approved, then I send out notices to those teaching staff and say, yes, you are now hired by Princeton Public Schools, and I start the onboarding process with their time clocks and orientations. We try to do those as we're getting people hired, especially in the spring now. And then over the summer, we'll pull one together in our new teacher back to school times. So each staff member does go through an orientation with me to cover some of those basic items, our handbooks, our acceptable use policies, our harassment policies, our maltreatment, and all of those pieces. So we do cover that. Any questions that you have about the process?
Going back to the interview teams,
Mhm.
Are you going to require every single one? Are you hoping for a majority of the list there?
Yeah, so depending on the position, we do, my expectation is like for teaching positions, it says building administrator, at least 2 representatives from the grade level or department. So that means there's going to be at least 3 people on that interview team. So let's say we're hiring a science teacher. They're going to have 2 science teachers in there. They're going to have an administrator in there. Then they're inviting our special services director. They're inviting our director of teaching and learning, and they're inviting the HR director. Typically, what I will do is sit on some of those when the building administrator is saying, hey, I'm having a hard time getting enough, or they feel like they maybe have some really top quality candidates that they're not maybe sure which one they're going to try to go with. So when it says their name, those people are expected to be there. The invites are the extras And again, a lot of times we try to have other people involved in the process because it does allow us to get that input from them, show some ownership. It's transparent. So it's a good question.
So Jason, these are minimum.
These are minimums,
So if-
correct.
If, you know, they wanted to
If
have.
they want to have a
extra
whole department,
teachers, or they could,
they
but
could.
we're saying they have to have a minimum.
Correct. And if they're gonna have 7 or 8 people from the same area in there, then I'll kind of ask them why they want to do that. Because again, as a candidate coming in, if you're interviewing for a paraprofessional position and you're being interviewed by 7 people, while it's a very important position, it may be extremely intimidating as well. And we don't want that perception out there at least. And so we tried to tier the positions based on the candidates' comfort levels to some point. We are also working in the question guides. There are times where we have our candidates perform some tasks, whether it be teaching a lesson, whether it be teaching a drill or a skill if they're a coach. So that is a great opportunity for us to see what they look like in a classroom. And it sometimes does separate people because we have people that are very good creators of resumes, and we have people that can talk the talk really well. But we want to know, how do they relate to people? And so majority of our teaching staff obviously work with our finest, and we want them to be able to do that versus coming in thinking that they know everything and maybe can't deliver. So we do try to put in some of that performance side as well.
See, you don't have superintendent listed.
I don't. We have a whole separate process.
Not that we're
for
gonna have to worry about it for years and
for
years and
years
years.
and years, yeah. We actually have a whole separate process for our.
I can remember that vividly.
Yeah.
Were you a little?
My pants were ripped. No, I didn't get new pants.
Yeah, that's a whole separate.
Yeah, I'll just tell you that there was this row, and then there was another row, and there was another row. It's like I was interviewing the Congress. You were. I think there were 25.
Yeah.
That's when your pants ripped, right? During the
Yeah.
interview process.
So something like this already laid
The
out.
second interview.
This, Sarah Markshausen had a framework of this in there, so we took, Dan and I met and took what she had started, and then we started filling in all these other details to make sure that, like I said, we have a comprehensive plan then, and we have a great resource for the hiring managers, for those building principals to go back to and say, okay, it's been 3 years since I've hired a elementary teacher. What does this maybe look like now? So all of the administrative team has done a great job of providing feedback to us. My job was basically to organize it. So I feel like we have a really good solid plan now, and hopefully that'll be something that we can use, and hopefully don't have to use it a lot, but it is an essential tool that we will need for years to come.
I don't, maybe it's in here, but, we contact all candidates that we do not offer the job to.
Correct.
Right? That's
Yes.
the expectation.
Yep. If they are offered an interview, they come in and interview, then we contact them either way, whether we're offering them the position or whether the position has been offered to someone else. One of the things I am looking at is we utilize AppleTrack, and I'm trying to find a way on how we can notify anybody that's also applied through email that, hey, we are interviewing at this time, you were not selected for an interview. Being new to that side of AppleTrack, I don't know how it works yet, so I'm still learning.
I do have something that just triggered so when a position closes,
Mhm.
is that part of this process that it shows up on that track that it's closed? It's
Yes, yep,
And
and
I
so
know that
once they
doesn't
offer the
always-
position, like I said, it does come here for the consent agenda. The building administrator puts in a assignment information form through Laserfiche, and then that comes to me, and then that's what triggers, once I approve that based on your approval, then that's when it closes, it goes to my secretary, who then closes the posting. But we do keep those open until we have a candidate hired.
One thing I want the board just to be fully aware of is, you know, when the hiring, like if the principal or the AD or Jason
offers the position, we try and be real careful with the language we use. We say, we'd like to offer you the position. You're our number one candidate that we will be bringing forward to the board for final, to try and let them know that they're the one, right? But it's still contingent upon approval and a clean background check, once we go through that. So, sometimes it gets a little tricky in some high profile positions. I've had, a situation in my previous district where, that happened, but then of course, like the head basketball coach, right? So it showed up in all the newspapers, such and such person is the new basketball coach, and so sometimes the word gets out that, and I guess that's really, for some positions, that's gonna be difficult to control that side of things. But what the message we try and give is that, they're our number one candidate. We're moving them forward to the board for approval.
All right, Tiger Pledge poster. Take the Tiger
Pledge. Well, I guess if you wanted to be here all night, I could show all of these different videos that we've created. But have you seen the Tiger Pledge video? Take the Tiger Pledge video. We have it plastered everywhere, and when I told you guys this right away. I mean, one of the first things that I learned when I first got here was that there was for one, first of all, there was just amazing things happening in our school district that we should be so very proud of. But two, I found that out in a hurry that not everybody understood or knew all of these things. There was a disconnect between the reality of the awesomeness happening in our school district and the perception that was outside from some folks, right? So I think that in a world that is a divisive world, I think we're in a different time where there's just a lot of negativity, right? I mean, go ahead when you leave here, listen to the news, go watch the news, see how many people are bickering and pointing fingers and blaming and just, I mean, it's real toxic, right? And that's one thing that I really felt strongly that we needed to try and be better than that. And so how could we get our messaging out just on that we're better together, and that let's all come together and let's take the Tiger Pledge to own our own stripes, strengths, and needs. And we really think that that's a great catchphrase, if you will. It's very meaningful. The whole word own, we want people to understand that, we own this place. You own this place. Students own this place. Everybody owns this place. When they walk in, they should feel like this is ours, right? And when you own something, you have a sense of pride. We own our own stripes. No two tigers have the same stripes, right? So we want to really celebrate the fact that everybody's different, and that's awesome. The world would be boring if everybody was the same. So let's celebrate the fact that we all have different stripes. We're different, and we all have different strengths, and we all have different needs, and that's what we're here about, all about here in our schools. So we're excited that we created a set of videos that we have. The one that's about 3 minutes long, we have that plastered in different locations. And then what we're doing is a drip campaign where we have different pictures that are going out, and then smaller videos. And that will be happening for the next probably 2 months or so. The one thing that we talked about administratively is that, we could have picked hundreds of people to showcase in some of these videos and pictures, but we couldn't do that, so we just randomly picked some. So what we want to try and do is try and reach out and get more of our staff showcased, more of our students showcased, to really have everybody hopefully take the Tiger Pledge and buy into this and be proud that we're Princeton Tigers, right? So we're gonna keep playing on this. Different buildings are doing different things. We're doing different artwork and messages at the different building. I don't know if you guys caught on at the high school the wall that we're hopefully, and I don't know if that's fully gotten going yet, but we want people to write on there. This is my pledge, and we think we've worked a lot with the high school students. As a matter of fact, there's been like 15, 20 students that I've talked to, and You know, they're proud of their school too. And they want to showcase, you know, what makes Princeton High School awesome, but we're trying to do that at the other levels too. There's another video that's going to be coming out that's was created for internal staff, and it's an animated video. I don't know if you've seen that. That was about our game plan. Some of you have, some of you haven't. Jessica was the voiceover for that.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is I'll send that out to you, but that will be coming out at a later time. In terms of the power of messaging, it's one of the bigger things that we do. And I think that some places can take that for granted. I think that I probably took that for granted for a long time. But I think that how people think and what people say about us is a huge impact on our success or failure as a school district, right? If people think and say good things about us, we're going to have more people that want to come to our school. It's going to make all of our jobs easier, right? And we did, but if we don't share the positive, right, nobody else is. It's up to us. It's a responsibility for us as a board and as an administrative team and for teachers and staff to talk about what we do. We do great things, but if we don't talk about it, if we don't tell our stories, nobody's going to know about it. And you know, and it's just human nature. If we don't talk about it, I tell you what, the negative stuff will always be there. It'll always kind of creep up. And that's the whole idea of trying to drown out the negative with so much positive that you can't even hear the negative, right? And it's not hard for us to come up with great things to talk about, because you walk in any of our buildings, you can see dozens of things right away. So that's what we're trying to do. I want you to know that our next step in this process, we're actually already starting to talk about our next year's campaign, if you will. Same kind of quality, same kind of professionalism that you've seen in the Tiger Pledge, but the messaging will be slightly different, and it will be focused on recruitment of enrollment. And it will be specific to the kindergarten, pre-K and kindergarten, when families are trying to decide, where do I want to send my child to school, right? And it's a very difficult decision for families. It's one of the most important decisions they make in their life. And we want to be able to showcase what sets us apart, what makes us special at Princeton Pine Primary and the kindergarten and the pre-K, and what that experience is going to be like. So we have a meeting set up with some of our kindergarten teachers for right away in June to start talking about that whole process of the kindergarten roundup and starting that earlier than we have and getting out in front of other school districts who are our neighbors that start that much earlier, and getting the messaging out, okay, and using lots of different ways to do that. So just the marketing side of that. And then in addition to that, we'll do some other pieces that are more of a pre-K-12 approach, which are really focuses on our points of pride as a school district, to just really get things out there so people would say, hey, I really like to send my child there. So just to showcase the positive. So that's some of our next steps that we'll be focusing on.
A lot of positivity there.
A lot of positivity, and I tell you what, a lot of school boards do a lot of thinking about this when it's time to go for referendum, right? And you know what, we're at some point in time, it's inevitable. We probably have to go out for one, right? But we're starting this work now, so that if, you know, setting the stage for that. So if the time ever comes, hey, it's not like we're just going out when we need something. It's like, no, we've been doing this all the time. And it should make that much more easy for us.
Standing. Snow relief bill.
Just need to make you aware that there was a bill that came out that the governor, and the the bill came from the legislators, and they passed that. And I think it said that districts could use 3 days.
Basically said that schools that don't meet the state minimum, so 165 days, would have the opportunity to count days toward their 165. And with doing so, then there's some stipulations that come with that. We have 172 student days. We've had 6 snow days. We are not utilizing this bill. Therefore, the things that do come with it wouldn't apply to us at this time. If we were to have 2 more snow days, then we'd have another conversation about that. Because we'll be out of money for snow,
Yeah.
snow removal.
So I guess we just wanted to have this on so the board was well aware that, yeah, this bill is out there, it's in the media, but our school district will not be utilizing that bill because we do not need it. There are some districts back from where I was in southeastern Minnesota that had like 10 snow days. So those districts will have to use this bill, but fortunately we do not. So that's good news for us. While we're on the topic, I would just tell you that so far the preliminary information on our flexible learning day has been positive. Okay, and we will be doing a survey out to parents. And I do think that might be a good future work session topic for the board to get some more in-depth information on what is all entailed with a flexible learning day. So look for that, whether it be this year or maybe we'll wait next fall to prep you for it. But unless something crazy changes, I think our thought is that we would continue with that practice, but we'll certainly survey to see what people think.
So a question from a 9th grader, Dad, are you gonna make us do flexible learning days every time there's a snow day? And I said, I'm not sure if is it gonna be every time there's a snow day, it's a flexible learning days, or only if we get close to that threshold?
I think that we can have that discussion. I mean, my first thought would be, yes, we would. The only exception to that would be if the board or us, we said, well, let's give everybody just one freebie just to be able to enjoy the time-honored tradition of a snow day.
Or if we happen to have 3 in a row, there may not be, teachers may not be ready for that extensive of a piece, so we would have to have the conversations around that.
Yeah, I guess my thought would be if we're gonna do it, we'll probably do it right away, but I mean, it'd be worth a discussion if we wanted to have a one or so, or I don't know. I mean, that, once you open that door, then where do you start and stop with that? And that would be something we have to discuss.
Are you going to survey students?
I think so, yep, absolutely. You know,
Because there was some responses over there in body language, so that's why, are you gonna ask some students?
yep, I think we definitely need to ask students and parents. When I did this in Caledonia, for the first few times, what we got actually from students was it was harder than just a regular day of school, just because some of our teachers were piling on so much. Now, I don't know, did you guys experience that or not? I'm just not sure.
I was spending like 40 minutes per class on myself.
Yeah, so I think that's the learning experience that, you know, we want to have is say, okay, you know, we don't want it to be 10 hours of work. You know, we want it to be, what we were saying is, you know, maybe 20 to 25 minutes per class. What would that look like? Because when you take a look at a regular school day that's like 6.5, 7 hours, when you take a look at the number of minutes that they're engaged in learning, you know, when you minus lunch and passing time and, you know, the student has a study hall or what have you, we try and be comparable to that. But yes, to answer your question, students' input is pretty important because, and plus we want that because our teachers, we can modify how we do it.
Right.
All right.
Going into the unassigned budget adjustments. Michelle?
All right, the fun stuff.
Yeah.
We talked about this numerous times already, but we are working off of option 3. If you recall, we had 3 options to start with. And we move forward with adjusting our budget using option 3, which was not replacing either a retiree or a leave that has been scheduled for next year. We're also working right now to replace about 6 of them. Software expenses, we talked about this administratively, we can move software expenses into capital, and that was part of the whole discussion of moving to 200,000 a year after we received data on our capital plan, and capital plan is later in the meeting. Staff, yearly staff development, this is new and different than one-time, cost shifts. This would be, each year we would charge 50,000, back to staff development for our, district staff development days, which does not cover a full day of all of our staff. Only probably half. The one-time cost shift, that is the same as what we have used in the past. If we absolutely need it, this is sitting in fund balance in our reserve account. We would take this a full day, because we have 2 or 3 district brand days. It is a legal expense in staff development to pay for teacher salaries and stuff. We have an assigned fund balance shift. This is the same as we have not had to use it. Currently, I'm not in. That would be a one-time shift. Hold us up if we need it. Reducing 1 bus route. We've had conversation regarding that. We'll discuss this with her. This year we have ran a shortage of drivers, and we have reduced more than 1 bus. They are functioning. There are a couple that we really do need to bring back because they link out much because of our square miles and just the logistics of getting around. But one of the routes that we consolidated changed the routes by about 5 minutes. So we can absorb that. So that would help offset the increase that we would see contract. Community ed paying for partial custodial. And then anticipating that Rum River will be able to pay back half of what they owe us. Regarding, we paid them a little over 200,000 for cash flow, and with the intent that would come back to the districts when we were up and running and functioning and had cash. And then this includes an add of a partial operations secretary that would be shared between food service and custodial. Mainly, the opportunity arose because we had a requirement in food service, and we would like the systems secretary, somebody who's running our systems. So like Skyward, we have a benchmark 3 program. We have all of our key fobs. We just have lots of systems that are time consuming, and we don't do a really good job running those because we just don't have people on the ground to do it. So we're always behind in getting teachers their key fobs and things like that. And so,
Just one additional thought on that. I think it's important for people to know is that, you know, when we sat down with the different groups on what people need, our building and grounds, certainly, they were asking for 3 or 4 staff members for maintenance and cleaning. And, you know, that was legitimate. But what we found out in some of our analysis is that some of our building leads were spending up to, you know, 1 to 3 hours a day on paperwork, which would be like ordering supplies and, you know, those kinds of things. So what our thought is that this person will be actually processing all of the paperwork associated with the building and grounds, which then will save us on the workforce, that those people will be able to be working instead of doing paperwork.
yeah, so please comment after we reviewed the job description together and he added a few things. He goes, but you're telling me, and I'm gonna use Eric Meyer as the example. You're telling me Eric will instead be sitting at his computer is now gonna be actually out in the building. And I won't lose that time. He said, yes, that's the goal. So we feel we can make that a shared position and make that function. It would be full-time during the school year and only part-time during, the summer months. Because food service does not, they don't, well, we have a summer food program, but we don't have the level of need for food service in the summertime, so we would, the person would most likely work a Monday through Thursday, schedule of 4 hours. So that we could get through the summer months. There's a lot going on in the summer. Our project list, as you'll see later, is quite long for building grounds this coming year, and will continue to be so with the long-term facility money that we receive. That brings us into the special education staffing, and just so you're aware, this is still a working document. It is not finished. We are talking sometimes on an hourly basis based on, and I hope Ben and Jason aren't getting mad at Michelle remaining going, oh my God, what can we do now? Because sometimes that's what I feel like. So there are some little adjustments that may be coming through. Special education, we talked about this, that they are requesting 2.5 staff. They were. Today we have discussed and are going to we will be changing that on the final to 1.5 staff. I also found out that we received additional federal money that will help offset those costs. So we'll plug that all in and that'll come up with a different answer. So that's all looking good. The goal is to get to the 700,000 in adjustments without impacting educational system programming, which means we are running our programs as efficiently as possible at a high level, to the best of our ability. And I think we all know that the state of Minnesota makes that challenging because they're not funding special education at a high level for what we're actually spending. And of course, percent or even 3% does not pay for our payroll costs increase. So it's a challenge every year. Any questions on, this is just the unassigned budget?
Question, so you said this will be revised then, based off of what you
Yes,
hear, okay.
yes.
So you'll send that to us just so we can kind of see that?
Well, it'll go through finance in May.
Okay.
So we will review what final recommendations are in May. The final budget will be to finance on the May meeting. And then we will walk through the approval process. So we'll actually discuss it one more time before we finally approve it first meeting in June. I can tell Ben's excited. I know that you've given a lot of good reasons why we would add that secretary position. But when I look at things we've reduced in the past, I have a hard time with that. Just that the Dan Conroy today, Jill's position was, when she resigned, was the career. That we didn't fill that. It's like things shift, but we never look back at what we lost in reductions over other years. So you still have to convince me that that's where that should go. Teachers do a lot of secretarial work and they're right next to the students, and we're not going to replace 2 of them.
That bothers me too when it comes to class size. For example, or like Spanish, I guess has what, 8 sections overload for next year or something. I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's a problem, I think. I'm thinking if we can put resources in our staff rather than secretarial, the students are nurses.
Well, our secretarial staff is our staff too. I mean,
Yeah, I know
they're all
that,
important parts
but
of our
I'm
team.
looking at the teacher-student contact.
Well, this is what I would say to that, is that we've created ranges that we would consider, I think, some of the best student to teacher ratios there are. I mean, in terms of every grade level band, we have the different ranges that we would have. And that's how we staff, is based upon the proportion of students with staff. And they're like with the, not replacing the,
Person.
you know, well, I'm gonna speak to the retirees. I mean, when we have a class of 250 kindergarten and bring in a class of 200 kindergarten, do we keep the same amount of staff? Because if we operate that way, we're gonna go broke in a hurry, because we have 50 less students. So, you know, we need to reduce, and we go up and down proportionally with the number of students that we have. And so, like, for those recommendations of not replacing with the retirees, that's just 100% related to those proportion of less students in those grade levels. As a matter of fact, we could pull those out again if we went on the lower end of our ranges. So for example, I think our kindergarten is 19 to 21 is our range, and we went with right now 18.5 students per grade. The next range is like 21 to 23. I think we kept it at like 22, you know, or 21. I mean, we went on the lower end of all of these ranges. Honestly, if we were going to the higher end of all of these ranges, we would likely be reducing another 2 to 3 teachers. And again, I'm gonna just, I think comparably speaking, our ranges that the board has set in terms of parameters are very good ranges. And, you know, and then it's a little different at every grade level. The career question that you have, I think that's a legitimate question. When we had made that change this year, when we had that position, she had resigned, and that gave us an opportunity to actually hire another counselor versus that career person. And I think the career person was a part-time position. So, I mean, that was actually an increase to that staff, not a decrease.
And it was at the request of the high school.
Well, and it allowed us the opportunity to, at the high school, if you recall, all of our counselors were called deans. So our counselors, there was, I think, 3 counselors, and they were a counselor, but they were also a disciplinarian. And didn't seem to really it didn't really seem to fit. You know, one minute you're counseling, and the next minute you're giving them attention. You know, and we're asking the kids to trust you. You know, it just seemed like it was not a good fit. So we had an opportunity to take one of those positions, say you're just the dean, and then we're going to hire another counselor. So we're gonna have 3 counselors, and then we're gonna have 1 dean. So that was an addition to that department. You know, the big difference, and I don't know if we've completely gotten there, is that logically speaking, you would think if you take away discipline, which is a huge part of that job, off of their plate, that would allow time for them to do other things, in addition to the social emotional counseling, but to add, you know, some of the career counseling onto those positions. And I don't know that transition has completely happened yet, in terms of just reconfiguring how that job looks like. And I do agree. I think there's more work that has to happen in terms of that, because in my opinion anyways, you take away, you know, discipline off the plate, well, now we can focus on some other things like career counseling, which honestly, careers is right in line with the job description of a counselor, is career counseling and academic counseling and social emotional counseling. Now, even with me sharing all of that, I still don't disagree that maybe we should, you know, that to me, especially in the high school redesign, someone focused on careers and matching people like 2 mentors or 2 apprenticeships and internships. I think that's going to be an important position.
And I do think that that's something Barb's taken a look at. She knows the position that was not replaced and those duties in the scheme of things did not get accomplished this year. I know she is meeting with her counseling staff and really trying to develop what that looks like for the fall, what that looks like for next year. So as Ben said, I think those duties are going to be there again. As we heard today, those trade skills are important. How do we help develop those? So I think those skills will come back. It's just, we gotta figure out who's going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, just from what I've heard and seen, I think it's definitely a loss for the kids when they don't get, that transition's kind of shaky like it is.
Yep.
If we can make that transition better, because it really is now they don't even have I know one thing that they don't do, or they haven't done yet, is the interview where they have the mock interview like they did before when you ran it. And I think that's invaluable for,
Yeah, they do.
Did they?
Yeah.
Couple weeks.
Oh, did they just do it? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay. So yeah, just stuff like that. I mean, there was other things that she did that was just like, oh, well, it just kind of fell off.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I would say that things like that, and we called it, it's just dessert, where we invited all the different businesses in, we did these interviews. That was, other people had to do that, right? So that was like establishing a new, like, people in that department hadn't done it before, and so there was a whole group of people that picked it up and did it. So yeah, we did do that piece.
Well, at times when we had, the department going, they had DECA, they had, where they had the interviews, they had, a lot of OJT, and a lot of that happening, which gave, people a preview with some of the skills, et cetera. And that has kind of gone by the wayside too. I mean, a business department that used to be 3+ people was down to a part-timer. And I realize it does something with registration and things on that order, but,
Well, I just need to,
Well,
some of you guys must know more than I know, because last I talked to Barb, she still hasn't even finalized the schedule at the high school. In terms of like courses offerings and those kinds of things. And so I don't know in terms of how many sections or how many of this or that we're offering. I don't know how you know that, because I don't know that, and I don't think that that's finished.
well, I don't think it's finished for this year at all. But it's some of those programs that we had that sort of filtered away that, taught some of these skills and taught some of these experiences and opportunities that have slowly been withered away.
But do you still drive a 1948 Ford?
Saved it.
Did you?
It was
Awesome.
46 Dodge.
Awesome. 46.
As old
I
as
mean,
I am.
I believe that right now the system is set up based off of, as you said, the requests that they're getting. I know, Jim, you mentioned the Spanish position that is posted. That's not necessarily an overload. That is the number of kids that have requested that course. So the current staff that are there have their sections. We have some additional, I think it's 0.53 that we have out posted right now.
Okay.
And every year Barb comes and says, hey, this is what I have. And then from a licensure aspect, I've been asking her to send me the positions that we don't have full with a licensure, because those are the positions I do have to post out. I will say a lot of times we're not going to get a 0.2 business teacher.
Yeah.
And so then that does end up being somebody within our system, and we get a variance for them. But in order for me to ask the state for a variance, it has to be posted. So some of this is process based. But I hear what you guys are saying. It can be frustrating seeing things that you valued going through school, or that you valued even as a teacher, starting to maybe not be a preference that our current students have. And I think that's where we have to allow the design process to guide us with that, and where our students guide us in what they're wanting, what they need.
One comment I would just share with the board that the high school administration shared with me, and that they were very thankful for, is they said, this is the first year they haven't been asked in a long time to reduce the number of FTEs that they've had at the high school, which is, I think, a real positive thing. We're projecting, as a whole at the high school, to have, 10, 20 less students as a whole at the high school. And we're maintaining the same level of FTEs. Now they'll be maybe reconfigured differently based upon what classes the students sign up for. But, yeah, I mean, that was a real positive thing, that we're not asking them to reduce, they get to maintain.
Well, thank you for the explanation to the retirees not being replaced. I think that helps in looking at this whole. And I think it helps for me to explain it to someone else, because it's easy to jump to conclusions.
Yeah, here's one thing I should also let the board know, is that, like kindergarten right now, that's a tricky one for us, because, we do a lots of analysis, on what we project what that might be, and we were projecting at like 218 students, which is far lower than what we have right now. What do we have right now? Okay, so 230, 240, right? So right now, we're sitting at like 196, okay? And, let's just say hypothetically, we don't get more, we potentially would have to reduce another section. We hope that's not the case. We're gonna keep working to get up to that place, but, you need to know, right now, we're at about 196 for confirmed registrations for kindergarten, which, is disappointing for 1 year, but, for me, I'm thinking, I hope to God that's not a trend of what's to come long term, where all of a sudden we have classes of 250s, but we're bringing in now the 200s, all the way through. That's significant decline. And we just never know if it's a blip on the radar or if that's gonna be the new normal.
All right, we'll move on to restricted budgets.
First one under restricted staff development. Staff development is carrying on. The fund balance of 200,000 at the end of 2018. This is their unassigned budget. I've got the 80,000 to the side, 50,000 is the second one to the bottom. But the one change on here is in the first line, where requesting a literacy coach, and I'll let Tim and Jason explain the literacy coach.
Well, in our staff development budget, as we took a look at that, the last several years, we have been at a line item anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000 for contracted services out to a company called LSI, for lots of our movement forward on the Marzano work. And, as we've been discussing administratively, we feel like we've been at that long enough that at some point we got to phase out of, that kind of a contracted services, and to a point where we say, okay, we got it. It's standard work, and we can provide that ongoing staff development in-house, with some, we might do some things with them, but certainly not to the level that we've done in the past, more maintenance kinds of things. So, really there's two philosophies that you can utilize for staff development. One, you can send people away, or you can bring people in, and generally speaking, that's like a one-time deal. And we found that isn't always the most effective. That sometimes it's good, but it's not always. We've had a lot of success in actually hiring folks to be on staff that would be that day-to-day, always here staff development. One example might be our tech integration coach, Jody Berling, for example. She's out providing staff development to all of our staff. She's on site all the time versus sending people out to go to a conference on staff development. She's here every day doing that work, and she's in and out of classrooms and that kind of a thing. So we've been discussing, other ways to duplicate that. Our teaching and learning director, Jessica, is really strongly advocating that we focus on literacy and early intervention. That would be at the primary and or in intermediate or both. But we likely would start that at the primary, and the whole idea is, folks, we spend a lot of money trying to intervene and catch students up after third grade that are a couple of years behind in their reading levels. And it just occurred to us, maybe we should spend a little money in the front end to catch them before they get behind. And that's an approach that we'd like to take, and that's where we'd like to, this wouldn't be any extra dollars to the budget. It would just be utilizing staff development dollars to hire that position. So that's one thing that we're considering, strongly considering.
That would replace bringing in consultant.
Yeah, yep. And then the other piece is, are you gonna talk about title dollars at all? Okay. That same concept we might utilize we have some Title IV dollars, that we have, these are new dollars that we can only utilize on a couple of different things, and we're considering taking a person that's a 0.5 math coach position and increasing that, using those dollars to increase that to be full-time. So that would be, the two positions that we would be adding. One would be this literacy coach, and one would be to make this math coach full-time, but it would be utilizing specific funding streams that we can't use for other things. We can only use it for staff development things, and then the Title IV, you can only use it actually for more gifted kind.
Is that funding stream ongoing?
Yes, yeah. Well, unless the legislature changes it.
That title is federal funds.
So with the literacy coach, instead of, like, if our kindergarten numbers did stay the same, instead of having to cut a teacher, would you
We
move that
yeah.
person into the
Yeah.
literacy coach?
Yeah, our thought is that that position would likely be opened and.
Most likely gonna be filled by a teacher.
Yeah.
Qualified, I guess, right? Yeah.
Capital planning?
Capital is also responding to tactical capital. Approved as having a $30,000 down each year in bond for the for that would boost so pretty much this plan has not changed. That band's aging out. We have the technology piece. Change here would be 5,000, or it would be under capital to help relieve stress on our unassigned area. And then the other categories, which is equipment, buildings on a per pupil basis, and money for learning. This is different other than software than what we had last year. It's forward. We have the tech plan with devices, capital. Of course, vehicle that we this when you're looking at any questions?
Just had a quick question, the bucket truck. What is that from?
Is he gonna talk to the city about borrowing a truck or like working with them, since we're trying to be friends with the city now?
Yes, we are, and we're making good progress. We're very friendly.
Because I know, like, for the 3 years that we've been on the school board, the bucket truck has been on there.
Yeah, and
I'm sure
as
if
you
we could just
noticed,
talk
we
to the
haven't
city and
come
be
to
friends
the
with
top
them.
yet,
and
but we
use their
did
truck.
get the cube truck.
Yeah, I know.
All right,
Yes,
long-term
we do work with
facility.
The city, I know, Keith, works pretty quite often.
I think Keith just has trees to cut down somewhere.
All right, we're on
Long-term.
long-term facility.
Long-term facility maintenance, this is a relatively rich funding stream that is for repairs. We passed the $4.5 million bond information here. And we are moving forward with those bigger projects. This is money that is left over that is going here. That of course we have to pay for our health and safety that is required by law, so that totals about $145,000 next year. And then we have a list of needs, and Keith is now, this is going to change a bit more accurate as we come into our May finance meeting and our meetings in May. But we will be looking at doing parking lot work at both the middle school and the high school will be added. We won't be doing the track this summer, and we won't be doing the district center entrance sidewalk that comes toward the building that needs some repair. Those things will actually be the summer of 2020, but are kind of on the front end of our radar. We're gonna do some painting. We are fixing the lighting in the classrooms at the middle school. We have fixed part of it. The main core area is done. We've got all the classroom areas to do, so that project will be continued for the next couple of years until we, as Dan says, can use all the light switches appropriately. And then we have our yearly maintenance of $75,000. This is basically projects anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 in cost. There's things like roof repair that happen during the year, any HVAC heating and cooling repairs, plumbing repairs that come over that threshold. We use long-term facility maintenance funds for that. And then we have emergency maintenance. We were typically around 65 to 75,000 in emergency. I bumped that up to 100, and hopefully we won't need it next year, but this year we were past the 65,000, but we did have authority for spending more than that because we had not spent the maintenance money of 100,000. So we just hope not to have any more emergencies go up as we did this year. Every time Keith walked in, well, this went down, and how much does that cost? So they're big repairs. They're 10,000, 15, 25. Most of them occur at the high school. Not all, but most. Any questions regarding this? I said it will be updated for the actual numbers that we have received for quotes, and we do want to carry a very good fund balance here. We don't want to get too low here because if something major goes out, even if it's brand new, something major can happen. That would require funding to repair it. So don't ever want to be at a 10% fund balance. We want to be carrying at least $500,000.
All right, let's move on to signed budgets.
All right, assigned QCOM. This is based on the QCOM plan for the district. It's pretty straightforward. Not much has changed here. We have the building goals. We have PLCs and the required costs that go with that plan, administrative costs. Anything else that we need to know? So this is pretty much the same each year. We have a good fund balance there. And we do assign that. That means it's not a required reserve and it's not committed. It is a choice that the district makes to assign whatever's left over each year back to go back into, this is kind of a staff development funding stream in which we improve teacher performance in the classroom. All right, program initiatives. This is the funding we started, year after I was here. We started with bringing on all day, everyday kindergarten ahead of the state. And, we have since had many things that we have brought on board, for funding streams. We are currently looking at beefing up our online, program. Currently, we do not market that, and the first year out, we had 30 students. The second year out, we had about 50. We're now up to 80, and we don't advertise that. Not all those students are Princeton students. I can't tell you the numbers, but we are drawing students from other places into our online programs. So we're looking at a coordinator and possibly a para there. We're still working on this online program piece, so we'll see what the final comes up with.
We have a meeting tomorrow to really dig into this further. We've had lots of meetings before, but we really determined that if we were going to continue on with online, we need to do it better than we currently are doing it. You know, we feel like there's just a huge room for improvement, and we need to invest in that program if we want it to be good. So that we're prepared to do that. We feel like we're in too deep to cut away from that. So it's either, you know, the decision is either we leave online altogether or we do it right. And we feel like we need to do it right. The other piece with this coordinator is this para position is really going to actually help our high school staff probably more than anyone, because some of our high school teachers who have been teaching online classes, we're also monitoring a study hall room, if you will, at that same time. This para will be the person that will be responsible for the room that the online students go to. So this, you know, this is actually kills two birds with one stone.
So a licensed teacher isn't necessary then?
Well, the licensed teacher is the teacher who's teaching the online class.
Okay.
Yes, so yes, absolutely. The online teacher is a licensed teacher, but in terms of, you know, monitoring the students during where they go, you know, we need to have some level of supervision. The way that we're doing it this year anyways is something that we're not real happy with.
No, for example, like the art teacher sat in there for 4 or 5 hours. Did she have to sit in there with the 40 students because she was a licensed teacher? Or could a para have sat in there?
Well, a para, that's what we're.
That's my question.
Yeah.
And she wasn't teaching the classes. She was just monitoring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't need to have a licensed teacher monitor.
That was my question.
Students working.
Okay.
So that's what that para would be.
Okay.
So we are recommending that we use program initiative. I'm hoping we can keep that one. Get their science. So. Been increasing full time since about 30 years.
So if we get too far in the weeds and we decide that online's not for us, we're cutting it, what would be the financial impact when we lose enrollment?
I don't know if we quite be to a million, but.
All right, so we're not cutting online.
What are you losing, 80 or are you losing?
600,000.
That don't necessarily go to Princeton.
And right now we've got some partials. And we have some kids that are fully online from our school, but we have a lot that are.
I know 3 kids that go to school, and the only reason they take online courses is because.
Well, the high school's trying to address that.
Because the online courses are easier.
But it doesn't go towards the NCAA, so if they take that route, it's not really
It's the easy way out though.
right, it is the easy way.
Yeah.
Wasn't the change made that if any required course is taught in the school, they
Yeah.
can't take it online? You cannot take a required course
If you're enrolled in our.
if you're enrolled
in our high school.
in our high school.
Yeah, so in addition to what we're talking about now, we've really tightened up the requirements for students. Where basically we said that if we offer that class in our building, cannot take that class online. Okay, that is the practice, and you know what? Actually, that is beefed up because those students had to, signed up for our regular classes, so that increased some of our enrollment, for our FTEs and things at the high school. So yeah, I mean, we have a big meeting with this tomorrow to learn more. But yeah, there's been a lot of positives, a lot of positives. I gotta hand it to those staff too that have been working on this. I mean, this is all new to them.
Right.
And they've been muddling through this, and the changes that we're bringing are things that we basically learned from the world of hard knocks, so that's what we're trying to improve.
Technology is science. One is, we collect funds from students when we went to one, devices in our school district. There's an option to have like an insurance program. Originally, there was about $35,000 left in what the students and the parents are paying for Chromebook repairs would stay in this fund, but the initial 35,000 startup is still there. We use that to help offset if we need that, just like staff development in our unassigned area. So that I don't still on the table. Assigned building improved. So this was originally there to, was set aside prior to Michelle coming and was part of our entire building project that happened here in 2014, 15, 16, and the end of it, 2017. We are at a crossroads here with Spanish immersion in our grades, grades 3 and 4. Right?
Yeah, you mind if I just share quick?
Just
Okay,
go.
I've sent information to the board. I think you're well aware of the situation that we've been wrestling with, and basically we have a couple of smaller classes, and we were considering dabbling with doing a multi-age approach this year. We had made the determination recommendation that it would be better for us and for our students and the families if we waited one more year for the transition. So we would like to have, the 2 sections in 3rd grade and the 2 sections in 4th grade of Spanish immersion with the clear communication to parents then that the following year we'll be doing multi-age, so we'll be reducing those. But we feel like in order to just make that big of a decision, we need to have time to prepare for that. So on the financial side, for us to be able to do that, this would really be a one-time, spending. So we would basically shift some of these dollars into program initiative. These are assigned dollars. So we would just assign this into another assignment. We would use that for the Spanish immersion for one more year. I think
we would basically close out building improved 100%. The only reason we would leave it there is because of the connection. That was our initial to city water and sewer, but in this capital fund, should we do that project?
We're going to have to really look at multi-age in other grades, I think, in Spanish immersion. For the long-term sustainability of that program, I think we're going to have to start with the 4 or 5, and then we're going to have to seriously look at what it might look like in some of these other grade levels. If for sustainability long-term, because we can't financially sustain classes of 15 or 16, and we get these weird numbers going through, so we have to have the ability to do multi. So that's what we're recommending. I think that talked to enough of you that support that.
Is there any talk with any of these Spanish families that might, once they see their MCA scores, that they might consider getting out of Spanish? Or are they committed to being there for at least another year?
The last month, I've had the great opportunity to meet a lot of our Spanish immersion parents, very active parents. There's zero indication that they would ever leave this program. I mean, these parents are committed.
Well, I know, these are like the parents that kind of started, they started it, right? So, I mean, we started it, but they're the
They were
initial
from the
people.
beginning, yeah.
And we had talked to them from the aspect of they have not had, like our third grade MCA scores may not look good because
Right.
they have not had a lot of English instruction. As they go into fourth and fifth grade, they get more English instruction. Data shows that those kids do catch up, if not pass their peers. So our hope is that their commitment is.
I just know myself as a parent, I'd
Yep.
panic when
It's
if I saw a low score, I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
we're bailing.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen, but we haven't had any.
As long as we
indication of
haven't
that.
had like 25 of the 36 people say that they're bailing.
All right.
All right, last piece, food service.
We're getting to the end, slowly slugging through.
Well, if you've been on finance for the last 7 years, you must have seen this 7 times.
That's true.
So every year, we have to set meal rates. Sorry. For our meal program. Typically, we have set increase of about 10 cents. We are required by law to get the federal free, and I kind of have that highlighted of where it is in 2019, which is dollars a meal for lunch. Breakfast is at $1.79. As Anna and I have been working through this, we are seeing at our upper levels, especially a reduction in students eating for various reasons. So we're recommending that we look more at a 5-cent increase instead of a 10-cent. Pull that down. There is no guideline that says right now that we have to be $2 by such and such a date point. So right now we are recommending the 5 cents, and then because of the reduction that what we're seeing in eating, and especially at our high school level, we put the data up above on the second sheet showing declining participation. We were up to 82%, and then did some changes with schedules at the high school that have affected our participation. And as we talked about it, we thought, wait a second, next year the 8th graders coming into 9th won't know any better, so probably we'll start to creep up a little bit. So maybe we're panicking for no reason, but because of that decrease, we are recommending that we decrease a position of 2.75 at the high school. We don't have enough participation really to support that position. We also have a position at the middle school that is 6 hours a day. We are recommending that we go to 5.75, not because of participation in that area, but because all of our other positions in our buildings doing the same work are only 5.75. So we would make that equitable. That's been that way since Deanna and I came on board, and we have an opportunity to look at that. So, and that would, we also would have the change in the secretary position, which would be hours. So those total adjustments would be with option A would be about 40,000, and with the 5-cent increase in revenue, we did the 10-cent piece, and with have 3 different options here, but we are heavily looking at option A. And currently what we're putting in the line item budget. Any questions there? So I hate to say this, Eric, but we'll go through the final budget in May at finance.
Yep. And then in
The
June.
workshop, and then we'll actually get to approve it in June. But by that time, hopefully we will have answered all of your questions, and it's a moving target. As we mentioned earlier, it's changing sometimes on an hourly basis for us. I ask lots of questions. So hopefully that we can keep our district, our goal is to keep our district healthy and not end up in a position. I'm not worried about this year. I'm not worried about next year. I'm worried about the 3rd year out where all of a sudden you're cutting 2 million and make adjustments along the way. I just don't want us to end up.
Okay, so everyone understands that nothing is final until we approve the final budget, and is that in June?
That's
The
our
June
first
meeting.
June meeting.
So that's when then we put our nickel down on this. So if people have questions, concerns, that's what we're here, get them to us. I would say this though, for a couple of these positions that I talked to you about tonight, not all of them, but a couple of them, we'd like to get moving on. Like for example, the literacy coach and that math piece, and that we would be using staff development funds for. So, I mean, those 2 positions we'd like to move on. And then the Spanish immersion, those 2 sections in 4th grade, we would like to move on that too. We'll hold off on we won't post on that other position quite yet on the secretarial piece. If there's more questions and things that people have on that, but for these 2 that I had mentioned, we'd like to get those posted. Are there any others, Jason, that we would need to get out?
Special, but those are out. It's just whether, how many we're gonna have.
And you should anticipate, it says on paper 2.5, but it's likely gonna be less than that. We're trying to whittle that down to more of a 1.5 area, so that's yet to be determined.
I just want to say in response to hearing this stuff over and over again, for those of you on finance. In the first year that I was on the board, we didn't have the workshop format, and I was not on finance, and when it would come here, I had no idea. And so I appreciate the workshop format, even though some of you are hearing it again, and I don't know how you prevent that, but I appreciate the explanation and the discussion.
I appreciate it too. I'm not
Yeah.
complaining or
Yeah.
anything.
And the
I'm
discussion.
yeah.
And the discussion.
Talk to him.
Hey, you got the gavel, you could like point of order or something.
You're a snag, you're a sensitive village
I
guy.
really, I've been a business manager a long time, and this actually stressed from doing all the way that we are now setting this up and functioning with it. It can't believe it.
Chuck would be so pleased.
That being said, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Chair, just one more comment.
She got the joke.
Hey, I'm just so proud of that community education booklet that came out. When you take a look at it in the mail, I mean, I tell you what, we've been around. This is one of the nicest, most well-done community ed booklet I've ever seen. So thank you to those people.
My kid's on the cover too.
Oh, is that yours?
All right.
What's interesting is I get Foley's and Malacca's,
You don't get Vincent?
and I get Princeton Community Ed.
I have Zimmerman's or Elk Rivers.
Yeah.
I got one question, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay, easy. No,
I mean, that's come around.
I think,